Leslie and I have known each other since early childhood. We grew up on the same country road in Mississippi.
I think why we're good for the community of Mississippi is because we're a product of this community. We are just two country guys, and we were embedded with what I call the diamonds of good character.
Come, join the family, and help us build the community.
Charles,
What's going on, Leslie?
what's going on, man? How was your week?
It's been a fast week.
Indeed, it has. A lot going on, a lot to cover, a lot to talk about. So, as we give, I can definitely say it wasn't a slow news cycle week or just a slow week, period. So, a lot to dive into today. We'll give our family time to come on in. Let me you guys come on in and join us so that we can get the party started on this Friday, the 15th of January, 2021, the Friday leading into Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday, which is Monday.
Mm-hmm. Today is his actual birthday.
Today is his actual birthday. You took it right out of my mouth. So definitely happy birthday there and honors and then to that family. So, it's ironic that for the the leader of such a historic nonviolent movement and all of his work and the body of his work on nonviolent protests, it's ironic the timing of what has recently happened and what has transpired in America. So interesting in terms of just the philosophical view on it, just the.
I wouldn't necessarily call that irony. I would call that America being America. I mean, these are the same issues he was fighting against, using nonviolent protests to point out. Systemic racism, pervasive through American culture. What you saw on January 6th was just a manifestation of that anger boiling over. As some of the officers described the individuals who were hitting them with sticks or took their batons to hit them, they were frothing at the mouth.
Right.
And the more we find out, the worse it gets.
That's true. There's never been a truer statement than that. It seems like, how when you peel an onion and you may start off and you're good, right? You're like, okay, my eyes are not going to water. I'm good. I'm doing fine. And the deeper you get into that onion, the stronger that onion gets. And then all of a sudden you find yourself just tearing up and water coming out of the eyes. And it seems like that. It seems like every day, the deeper it goes. And what just kind of rings in my mind is when one of the top law enforcement officials said, as you hear the discoveries and what comes out in the days ahead, it's going to be hard to stomach. And at the time he said that, I'm thinking, well, how much worse could it be?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think I told you, and I probably told the audience, I suspected that for them to get that deep of a penetration into the United States Capitol building, there had to be some inside help. Well, those details are starting to come out now. As a matter of fact, Nancy Pelosi had a press conference this morning, and she's put General Honore. Most people in the South know General Honore from his work during Hurricane Katrina.
Right, definitely.
He's going to be investigating the security breach at the Capitol. On the one hand, you have 433, 435 members of Congress.
Yeah, I believe so.
Would you want to work with someone that you suspect of setting you up?
No.
Now, there has to be a deeper look into what happened, because on January 5th, there's video and there's eyewitness, which will become testimony against some of the members of Congress, some of the elected members and their staffs. they gave tours of a Capitol that's been closed since March for COVID reasons. So that's called aiding and abetting.
Yeah, it is. And I gotta say, man, I was pleased with the appointment because we all, I mean, how can you forget General Honore? I mean, there's only one. I remember in the midst of Katrina and when he came in and rolled in, the work he did. And so they got the right one. I mean, I feel really good about who Pelosi tasked to head this up. So this is going to be interesting, which tells me this. There's probably even more that's going to come out that's going to shock us that we don't know.
Wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it for a second. I mean, because after an insurrection, why would you have members so forcefully trying to get around the new metal detector? I don't want you having a weapon around me if you are against me.
Right.
What do you need a weapon for if you have guards in there already?
Right. Right. Well, I mean, right, exactly. And I think, when you think about insurrection, and this caused me, because obviously this hadn't happened in our lifetime, so it caused me to go back to the history books, right, and really do some digging. And when you think about insurrection, it's not something that happens in a microcosm, right? It doesn't happen quickly. This stuff has been building for a long time. And when you think about it at its core, it's the resentment or disinfatuation with government as it is in some form. And so when we look at 45 and this president, particularly what he did was give visibility to something that we all knew was there, but now it had a voice. It had a much bigger voice, much broader scope, and it built. And it didn't start last week. This started 4 years ago, even 5 years ago, in terms of this huge momentum build. And I can remember before the election, right when the campaign first started, and it was early on. I mean, before the first debate, and a reporter asked a question: "If you should lose, are you going to contest it?" And his words, and I'm paraphrasing to some regard, was, "Well, number one, if I lose, then it's fraudulent."
Mm-hmm.
So if I lose, then it's fraudulent because we will contest a fraudulent election because there's no way I can lose. And so I just wanted to paint that picture, when you look back in history of kind of what it was. And one of the former secretaries of defense, I think he was in Clinton's administration in the first Iraqi war. I'm trying to think of the general's name right now, Wesley Clark, Arkansas. He talked about it because they had to deal with it quite a bit over there. And so he just had some really, really good detailed insights on the process. So I thought it was interesting.
Well, it's not a new thing. It's not a new phenomenon. Most people would be surprised to know that George Washington dealt with possible insurrection when he was elected president. So, as a matter of fact, officers in the military are trained off of his speech. He went and confronted it directly, one-man confrontation. I'll bring it to all of you as to why you need to let the republic stand. So they're trained on his speech. And so I would imagine that this will again be something that will be trained on for generations. Two pieces of, when you say irony, this is what I think. Two pieces of irony. One, when you hear Republicans getting up quoting Martin Luther King as a reason for why you shouldn't impeach Donald Trump. That is hilarious. It makes absolutely no sense. It's not grounded in reality. It's not grounded in Mars. It's not grounded in anything other than foolery. I'm sure I could come up with some other choice words, seeing it is his birthday, but there's nothing eloquent or fulfilling about somebody quoting Martin Luther King Jr. as a reason for not impeaching the person who incited the riot. You can't light the match and then hide your hand. Second thing, it is debasement and it is ignorant of them to quote Abraham Lincoln in saying that we should just go along to get along, because I guess they forgot what happened to Lincoln because he went along. He was assassinated.
Right.
I mean, so either they think we are dumb or they just don't understand history. They just pick and choose.
Or a selective history, right?
Yeah, selective. And then the other thing I wanted to bring you to as a precursor to all of this, to let you know. I mean, everybody is familiar with the Oklahoma City bomb. McVeigh.
Yes, Timothy McVeigh.
That was born out of militias in Michigan. A lot of trafficking in Michigan. So I wanted to bring you back to that and then fast forward to the attempted kidnapping, trial, and assassination of the governor of Michigan last year. And then the takeover of the State House in Michigan last year. And then I wanted to point out in that federal authorities and state authorities had to handle investigations into those militias because they had friendlies inside of the police department.
Right. And then when they attempted kidnapping of the governor?
Yes, of the governor. That's what I'm telling you. So the investigation around that, two things about that. One, the investigation around the attempted kidnapping, even though they rolled those people up and arrested them, they were able to thwart the effort. They couldn't rely on local police because they were a part of the problem. Secondly, we have a tendency to look at these things and just automatically jump to the fact that maybe it's white supremacy, maybe they're mad, maybe a lot of things. Here's what I will tell you. That was a dress rehearsal for taking over the United States Capitol. Michigan is a militia-heavy state, and I imagine what you'll come out of this with is that there were a lot of organizers in Michigan that came into this. And so when I suggest the topic of fallout for you, that's what I was looking at. So many things revolve around Michigan, and here's something that speaks to devaluing democracy.
Okay.
The former governor, he's been out of office for 2 years, Rick Snyder, was arrested yesterday for gross negligence in Michigan.
Whoa.
For our viewers, you will remember the Flint water crisis around 2013 or so. All those babies have some form of cancer or Legionnaire's disease. Their growth will be stunted because there was lead in their water because the pipes were corroded. Why do I tie that to dismissing democracy? Well, the Republicans had control in Michigan at that time. And even though Flint had elected officials and a mayor and alderman, he dismissed them and appointed emergency managers. Well, all of those emergency managers and people involved in Flint, they all got arrested the other day too. Meaning that they didn't respect the process of electing your officials, which is at the heart of democracy. They wanted to do it in an authoritarian manner. So all of those things, the fallout from Michigan, and I pride myself on our view as being smarter than everybody else. So I want people to understand.
Well, look, I'm biased. I believe our viewers are smarter than everybody else. And I think that they are very insightful as well.
Well, I think if you spend a little bit of time looking at those things and not looking at them in a vacuum, that's how you get to 2021. Now, I sent you an article. If you put that article up, this is how you get to 2021 too. A lot of fallout. And that's the article dealing with the racism inside the Capitol Police.
Okay. Let me find that one.
It's a ProPublica article.
Got it.
Yeah, so this in and of itself kind of sets the tone for what happened. And we know now it's 12 officers that are either fired or on suspension or under investigation for assisting and letting those people into the Capitol on January 6th. This is how you get there. This is how you get there. No one took us seriously. This is what Black cops warned about the racist Capitol Police for years.
Wow. Wow. I mean, let's stop right there and put a pin on that, because as a person, as a Black man, I know what that feels like. I know just through life and us talking, you know what that feels like. But how many times do you think, and not even just Black, but minorities, have to warn or in positions where you're repeatedly saying, this is what's going on, there's a bad apples in this bunch, and you feel like there's nobody listening? Well ahead of the destruction, when there's time to actually do something about it, nobody's listening.
Well, the proof is in the pudding. You can see from 2001 to the present, you had 250 Black cops had sued the department. That's since 2001. That's a lot of lawsuits for one department.
Yeah, it is. You know what? So you know what, Charles? We're going to get into a lot today on this show. One of the things I wanted to do, and we have the privilege of having a lot of young, smart interns that represent a different generational group, and I always like to get them involved and get their thoughts. And I just wanted to see, what some of them are thinking. So today we're going to invite one of our very own, Justin Jordan, in to join us here shortly. And we're just going to pick his brain, get him into the conversation just to get another generational perspective on insurrection and what's going on in his mind.
All
right. So let's get him. Let me bring him in, and we'll get Justin going here. Mr. Jordan, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Just fine. How are you, Justin?
Man, I'm doing all right, Charles. Glad y'all brought me on.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah. I'm doing good.
I think Leslie wants to pick your young and fertile mind on thoughts on what happened on January 6th from the perspective of your generation.
Hey, well, school starts on Tuesday, so let's keep it simple.
So, Justin, what you might want to do, if you turn your camera horizontal, it'll fill the full width of the screen there. There you go.
Okay.
Good deal.
I'm good?
Yep, you're good now.
Okay.
So let's start with the obvious question. So what went through your mind as you watched what was happening a little over 1 week ago today?
I mean, I think the first thing that went through my mind was just the comparison between what I saw was last Wednesday. Wednesday versus what I saw in the summertime, whether that was, there's been a countless, number of African Americans killed. This year seems like it was every week before COVID started. But when I compared how the police handled those situations versus this one, when I compared peaceful protests in the park and how the police reacted and, the people they arrested, and they weren't understanding in those situations. But yet when, a crowd storms the Capitol building, of the nation, not only are they understanding, but they're taking selfies. it's, you know, I saw one video where it seemed like they opened the gate and let them in, you know, like it. So it just, it was a very different experience to see how policing should be done and could be done. And not that it wasn't possible, you know, it was always, I looked at comparisons from country and the rest of the world and how police have so many fewer killings in other countries in the world, you know, just across the globe. And I compared that to the U.S. and I always said why. And when I ask white people in particular about this, it seems that they say, oh, well, you know, it's we have higher crime rates in America because of the government enables minorities or lower income communities to act out, and they bail them out with stimulus packages like welfare or things of that nature. And, you know, so that was the going excuse. But now when I see this and I see, okay, well, you know, these are your own folks. The people that you know, claim are so much better and, you know, that look down upon us, and this is how they act, but they are treated differently. So it just kind of showed me how we could be if one color, if you know, color truly didn't matter in the U.S.
Yeah, and just so people are aware, you had Olympic gold medalists, you had former military, you probably had current military, you had off-duty law enforcement, you had CEOs, you had all types of groups present.
I mean, you get some feedback for some reason. So I don't know if you change anything. And while you're addressing that, Justin, we got a message for you here. As Willie Mae said, "Hi, Justin."
How you doing, Ms. Willie Mae? It's been a minute.
All right, let me go to our talented audience for a while and pull in some of these comments. And Justin, I'll let you take the first one and read it as I post it up here, and we'll dive into it.
Okay. As a DMV resident, I know minorities don't want to be a Capitol Police. The pay is good, but the work environment is trash.
So Charles, that goes right into that article that you talked about, that kind of really talked about where Black Capitol Police have been talking about this and talking about the concerns about racist police within the Capitol Police organization, and those cries have fallen on deaf ears. And so here we have it from a DMV resident that's just kind of talking about the culture. And we talk all the time about how important our culture is, but let's talk a little bit about this. So the very people that are supposed to protect and serve, even in this case at the Capitol level, still dealing with racism.
Yeah, I mean, I think racism is pervasive. If what we're talking about is an institutionalized form of racism. So
let me ask you this: what did watching what happened, did the insurrection change your outlook on America? And if so, how?
I think it was more eye-opening than changing. You know, if I can interject, I think that it allowed other people to see how it really is, because it was so obvious. You know, it's easy to look and say, okay, well, this is 2 months ago and this is today. This is how they reacted then. This is how they reacted now. Now it's obvious. You know, there's no way you can deny that this color people gets treated differently than that color people. You know, so I think that's why, you know, when Charles said pervasive, I think it was more invasive. I think it was, you know, right in front of your face that you were able to really see what America really is. So the people that had doubts and said that that's not really what it is. Oh, you should have done this. You should have done that when you got pulled over. You know, you shouldn't have been moving, or, you know, you must have done something wrong because that's not what happens when I get pulled over. You know, now it's obvious. So that's what I would say about the situation.
yeah, I think the other piece of it is who has such a deterministic mindset that you're just gonna take what you want. It's 2021. We don't live in tribes.
Yeah.
At least that would be the thought of polite society. But as Justin said, it's laid bare. That visual is unmistakable.
Yeah. I mean, I think you guys are both hit it right on the head. Let's pull in another comment here. Let's see. Shonda says, you could tell that Representative Mace of South Carolina had only been on the job 2 weeks.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
Fair enough.
And the Town Shaker Poet, our very own Curtis Johnson, says, in all aspects of life, military as well, we're dealing with the same issue. So, yeah, I think, you know, that's one of the things that every person of color can tell you, that it does. You can't escape it by where you are. You can't escape it by where you live. You can't escape it by where you work. You can't escape it by your status. At some point, America is going to have to deal with the elephant in the room, which is the issue of racism. Head on.
You know, and I think the problem with racism in America is that it has so much to do with the economics in America now. You know, you look at the institutionalization of racism, especially as it revolves around the prison system. The prison system was built off of, you know, exploiting poor blacks and minorities and putting them in a system where, if you look in the Constitution, slavery is illegal everywhere but the prison system. So you funnel a bunch of people into the prison system to build your roads and your licenses and everything else that they do. And if you try to correct those laws, then you lose that source of income, especially in privatized prisons. So I think that racism is so built into the institution in the U.S. that it's become one giant web. In order to unwind one, you almost have to unwind them both and start from scratch.
All right, Justin. So now, before I pull another question from the audience, now I'm going to go right at you. So we warm you up. I know school starts Tuesday, but I'm going to start early.
Right.
With this one. So what can your generation do? What can your generation do? And I think, hold on, I lost Charles for a minute. Give me 1 second. He's coming back on here. So while I'm waiting on him to get back in, what can your generation do to make this better? Or what can you learn from this incident in our generation that helps you guys reduce that divide and really tackle racism head on?
I mean, I think that as we get farther and farther away from I don't want to say farther and farther away from racism, but farther and farther away from generations before us, where, even if I go to your generation, they're going to be a little bit more racist than my generation. It's just how it goes, because the farther back you go, the more prevalent it was. So I think as more generations go, it will become easier. And at some point, America will be such a mix that it'll be hard for racism to really prevail. But, we don't want to wait generations for it to slowly trickle away. Because I think it's something like we're 20 or 30 years away from America being a majority minority country. So, we're hoping that we don't have to wait, 30, 40 years for racism to dwindle and, the population to even out, so that it becomes harder. But I think it's important for our generation to stay involved, continue to vote. What we did in Georgia was amazing. What we've done with the Biden election was amazing. So I think that celebrities continuing to invoke change and push people to go out and vote and to show the power of voting is something that we haven't really seen in past generations of people will go out and vote, but the results just weren't there. It seems that no matter how many times Black people voted and how much was voted, change never happened. But now we're kind of seeing the fruits of our labor. So we should continue on this path, and eventually we'll get there. We're just not there yet.
Okay. All right, Charles, glad to have you back there. And so here's the next one, Justin. This is from Andrea Lewis. Andrea, hey, Andrea. Nice. Thanks for joining. Says, I'm a bit glad to see the eyes that have opened from these incidents. They can no longer claim Black Americans are making stuff up. It's in your face. We have a new precedent.
Yeah, I want to say, I want to address that directly.
Okay.
Richard Pryor is famous for saying, "Who you gonna believe, me or your lying eye?"
Yeah.
That is relevant, particularly relevant today. We just had impeachment proceedings where only 10 Republicans voted for impeachment. It should have been the whole House of Representatives. And you had people still standing on the floor speaking as if the big lie, which was that there was widespread election fraud, still exists. So while it may be obvious to us that this is a known unknown, and we're glad that other people finally see it, do not believe that these people are now certainly going to find conscience and religion in the vote, and that
No,
we're going to have a kumbaya.
no, they won't.
Lots of them are still, going after those same supporters.
I mean, look, when you can stand up and not only not vote nay, but when you can debate and object and state your opposition to it so passionately, yeah, we as much as I like to think we were advancing, I don't see it. And this brings up the next comment. I'll take this one up here. All right. Demetrius says, I agree, but then I have to disagree. And I think she's referring to your comment, Justin, because although it is obvious, it has always been obvious. Rodney King was beaten by LAPD back in 1991, awarded money, and it was swept under the rug.
Should I comment on that or?
Go for it.
Okay, so yeah, I definitely see where they're coming from with the Rodney King back in 1991, but I would take it a little bit farther back. The first time where you really see national news on racism was Emmett Till. Back when his mother, allowed them to have that open casket, and those pictures were on the newspaper, whether you were in the northern U.S. or the southern U.S. And so you've always seen like this, like if it was on a graph, it would be like this influx of racism was in 1991, but it wasn't in 1992 because we didn't hear about it. Then it showed back up in 2001 with the with the 9/11 bombings, and we were accusing all the Islamic people of being terrorists, and then it shows back up again. But it's so it would look like some sort of wave on a graph. But I think as social media becomes more active and self-reporting becomes a more prevalent thing in society, it gets harder and harder to hide it. And so in 1991, everybody wasn't taking videos of everything, and and certainly not before then. So in the age of technology, you can't hide anything. Now whenever anybody gets pulled over, we're recording. We got apps in our car where as soon as you report you're getting pulled over, they start recording. So it'll become like your commentator said, it's always been there, but now it will be seen. There's no cover-ups anymore. Where it's on my phone. I'm on FaceTime with my mom while I'm getting pulled over. So you can't hide it anymore. So that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, and I think visual representation of these events speaks way louder than any analysis that I, as an attorney or professor, can do in a classroom or a courtroom. The visual itself speaks volumes.
Right.
But tie it to this point. If we were making great strides in progress, and we recognize insurrection for interfering with the government's business and trying to overthrow the government, why then were Republicans comfortable enough to still tell that big lie?
Because those are the insurrectionists. Exactly.
Exactly.
It's a political. It's a political battle. This has been going on a long time. So, and I don't want to say every Republican because that's not true. you know, and in theory, some of their beliefs economically and socially, you know, have merit, you know, and and that's not to say that I'm a fully left wing, they have some points, but it's just that it's almost like you can't agree with any Republican point without going against your own race, and it shouldn't be that way. You know, you should be able to say, you know, I believe that, you know, if I'm a small business, I want less taxes so that I can, you know, build up my brand, or, you know, whatever the situation is. But if you're a person of color, you have to put your race before your business. Mm-hmm. So right now it's kind of like a battlefront, and until we get the insurrectionists out the office and out the way, we won't be able to fully heal as a country into, you know, what we have seen ourselves to be this whole time, you know, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Now, I'm going to jump in here and do what I usually do. I'm going to start some mess. I'm going to start some trouble, but I think it's good trouble, as John Lewis would say. And it comes off a comment that I'm going to post from Andrea, and it basically says, I understand that not all have changed, but do you not feel the pacifists have lost some footing with such a large display against democracy? Now, here's where I'm going to start some trouble. I think, just me personally, I think that at some point, the pacifists that I get most frustrated with are the ones that look like me. Now let me say that again.
Yeah.
The pacifists that I get the most frustrated with are the ones that look like me, because we are conveniently, we are conveniently looking the other way from the very racism, and we also participate in the act. And so here's how that happens. Let me paint the picture. If you look at a corporate structure, sometimes it may be you've done well. But then if I had to look at your decision making all the way through the chain, and as an executive, do your decisions represent fairness and equity, or have you conveniently been a pacifist because your bank account has been filled? And so I think we can't be so biased that we don't realize that we have to make a stand too. And I'm just saying, being fair, being right, the same principles we want everybody else to judge us on, we got to stand up and judge. And what that means, sometimes it's not going to be convenient, sometimes that seat is going to be hot, and sometimes it's going to cause you to sacrifice something. And that's just the reality, because even for us to vote, people before us laid down their lives. They had to sacrifice something to give us the right to go and cast that vote. We too, and I can certainly speak, I've seen it a lot in my generation, we're conveniently woke. We're conveniently
I'm gonna push back right here.
I figured you would.
I'm gonna push back, because this is not about us.
Okay.
This ain't about us. Tim Scott so far is the only black person that's visible on the scene that has said that he would go against impeachment. Those were not black people that you saw out there. The black people that you saw out there on January 6th were that heroic officer who we now know, the vice president, was 100 feet from where he was trying to redirect those individuals from.
Yes.
So this ain't about us. So ain't no need in putting us in their fight.
Nope.
We have to learn to be surgical with our political power. This ain't about us. Last I checked, black women voted 99% to save the union.
Yeah.
Black men voted 90% to save the union. So this ain't about us. This is about white nationalism, domestic terrorism, white privilege, upset because they didn't get their way. This was the ultimate in temper tantrums by a toddler. Don't have nothing to do with us, because we know how to act accordingly.
I just wanted to start some trouble.
Yeah, but don't. What I'm telling you is don't. So here's my 2-week superstar. because she put it right out front, and that's Cori Bush from St. Louis, newly elected individual to the House of Representatives, Cori Bush. And she said the impeachment was necessary because Donald Trump, whether he glommed onto or he feels it in his heart, he pushed the white nationalist agenda. And by doing so, he found a fervent following of individuals who are willing to pay the full measure to make sure he got what he wanted.
Yeah. No
So
doubt.
if you start right there, then you have to root out that white nationalist behavior. Now, are all white people white nationalists? Heck no. But it's just like when they say one apple can upset the whole cart, because if you got a rotten apple, then that rotten apple is going to disease some of the other apples.
You know, Muhammad Ali said something. I'm not sure when he said it, but he talked about snakes, and he said racism is like 1,000 snakes. He said if you were running down a hallway and you saw 1,000 snakes, and you knew 10 of those snakes were good snakes, and they would have your back, and you knew 50 of those snakes really didn't want to eat you or really didn't want to bite you, but the rest of them, they wanted to kill you. When you ran down to the edge of that hallway, would you close the door on all the snakes, or would you hope that the 50 snakes who didn't really want to kill you and the 10 snakes that would defend you would block off the other 900? So that's kind of how I look at, white people and racism, is that even though, some are nonchalant and aren't really active participants in racism, when you don't stop your cohorts from being racist, I got to close the door on all of you to keep myself safe from the ones that that are, because I can't tell the difference now. Back in the 60s, I knew who was racist, because they was gonna call me boy, and I was like, okay, well now it's obvious. But today, they look just like me, same clothes I'm wearing, they just tell you no. Or you're not getting this position, or you're not getting in here, or whatever the situation is. So that's what I would say.
The reason why I love this forum is because, and great job, Justin. I'm proud of that urban law intern over there. But the voice to speak passionately about whatever you believe in a subject, and I know. Charles, you did exactly what I was hoping you did when I started that foolishness. But I'm always strong. But the reality is this, and that went back to my point, because I was starting with us, but it really wasn't directed at us. But the reality is, if I in that situation, Justin, that you just gave, I'm gonna close the door on all the snakes, because I can't take that chance.
Right.
Charles, what say you?
See, here's the thing, and I say this all the time. I'm more of Harriet Tubman, and I love Muhammad Ali, but I'm more Harriet Tubman. I'm gonna take my flashlight and my 12 gauge, and I'm going down that hallway, because nobody's gonna deter me from getting to where I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean a literal 12 gauge, although Harriet Tubman had a literal shotgun. I can outthink 1,000 snakes. Yeah. And so if you walk in that confidence, then you make your own table. You don't rely on them for the table. You make your own table, and then you can invite them to the table.
Yeah, and I think that, if I can touch on that, I think that goes into economic wealth. And that's something that we're starting to realize in this generation, is ownership.
That's right.
Is the importance that it's, no longer can we ask for fairness, we're going to take it. And our 12 gauge shotgun is money.
That's right.
We realized that, okay, we stopped buying this. We realized the power of the black dollar, and that if we stop buying this, they're going to feel this. Okay, so now we're going to make our own black high-end companies. We're not buying Gucci anymore. We're investing in real estate. We're buying our own neighborhoods back. So I think that's our 12 gauge shotgun is economic ownership. And the more we realize that in order to defeat racism, you have to have the power to have a voice at that table.
That's right.
If you bring, if you bring your own table and they're like, man, I know we've been having steak and potatoes and asparagus over here at our table, but now they got ribs and crawfish and everything going on at that table. So they got stuff too. So we're gonna have to bring them in at our table, or they're gonna keep eating without us. So I think that's what will be important is realizing that if we want a piece of the pie, we got to go and take it.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, good point. There's been a lot of, we touched on that when we did the series on, with Robert Relch, and the inequality, the racial gap and the wealth gap in America. But I agree with you, Justin. We have to understand and leverage that it's not just our money, but it's our collective money and what we do with it. We're already the largest consumer base in the U.S. period. We're the largest consumer base. We spend more than anybody else, but we've got to be selective about how we spend it, and so that we can circulate those dollars within the community more before it leaves out. I think the last stats I looked at, and I hadn't even put up the latest one trend. The last stats I looked at was our money stays circulated in our community for an average of 6.5 hours. Before, so the way I look at that, 6.5 hours, I had to wait to get out of work to spend.
I mean, and that's our own fault. That part I say the Black people have to take accountability for and understand that if you want to have success later on in life, you have to sacrifice the finer things in life now. You can't go and get your Chevy Impala with the 24-inch rims and you live out in the sticks. It's important to understand that invest in your assets that will pay you first so that you can buy what you want on the back ends.
So what's your other words? You're saying buying assets as opposed to liabilities.
Exactly. That's exactly. So, buy your watches and your liabilities once you've already, bought enough assets that you can live off that passively. So, and that's another big thing in this generation is passive income and how to develop that. And so, like I said, I think it just takes time to catch up with everybody else. If you they have a 400-year head start on us, and not only a 400 years head start, but for those 400 years, they had, free labor. So it's going to take some time for us to catch up even and how to move in America. And I think we're just now learning that, how to work economics and we're teaching ourselves how to do certain things that weren't open to us in the past. And, so I think we're heading in the right direction. It's just slow.
All right, family, get your comments in. Anybody have any questions for Justin? Put him on the hot seat. He's ready. I'm going to put some of these other comments here and coming from the audience. Let's see what we got. All right, question. This one is for you, Justin. Were you taught this concept or did you acquire it?
Pro tip. Before you answer that, pro tip. This is where you get a chance to flex on your biography. Tell people who you are,
okay.
who you aspire to be.
Okay. Yeah.
And tell them about your family roots.
I would definitely say I was taught this. I'm not going to disrespect my mom and act like I wasn't. I was fortunate to come from a family where, my mom went to Harvard for business school. She's, well established in the business community. And so because of that, she's fluent in, for lack of a better term, white language, how to move in that world.
Code switching.
Right, exactly. Code switching, right. So I don't know if our whole audience is Black, but for those that aren't, the ability to switch how you act, right now, my professional, approachable young brother, urban law intern look versus, me at the grocery store with my homeboys, so it's being able to switch back and forth is something that you learn but from watching people who came before you. So I would definitely say the concept of this for me was taught, and it was polished when I came to Jackson State, and even more so when I came to urban law, and I was able to get into the work world and get around professionals that have been doing it for 20, 30 years. So it's definitely still a work in progress, but yeah, I would definitely say it was taught.
Good point. Here's the next one. Andrea says we have to start at the beginning, teaching children about money and assets in elementary school instead of waiting into college. They should be owning property by college. Yes, we cannot start early enough.
Two problems with that. When you say teach, give me a little bit more about what you want, because everybody knows, especially in Mississippi and other southern states, that the curriculum is not necessarily geared towards building entrepreneurs or owners and CEOs. It's geared towards making hourly workers. So where is this teaching coming from?
Is this me?
I think he was just shooting it
No,
out.
I sent that back to the audience.
Okay.
Concepts of managing money. But who's going to teach it? Because you're not going to get buy-in from any public schools in Mississippi, I don't think. You might. I doubt it. Not to the degree enough that it's going to move the boulder up the hill. So that means it's back to the community to teach it. And largely what's been happening in our community is somebody learns how to do something and then they go on their own way. I'm not arguing about whether or not everybody's supposed to be an entrepreneur. I'm saying that for more than 30 or 40 years, the curriculum in public school in Mississippi has been geared towards holding certain people in place. And the community, while it did what it could do, we have more to do. Doesn't matter to me if you're an hourly worker or an entrepreneur, as long as you maximize the talents that you have.
Yeah, and I think the community is the right answer. It is community, and all of us have a part to play in that about business teaching. And here's the reality. I mean, I guarantee you, any of us could go to our parents, and they could tell you a bunch of stories about what if they knew then what they know now, what they would have done differently. So the question should be, so we all have those stories now. So why don't we go back and teach and get involved and if you're not already, and I'm not saying you're not, but if you're not, get involved in teaching those things to the generation coming behind you, so they don't have to get to this place and they've got to learn that. At least they know that and they start a step ahead. I mean, the reality is this. When I look at it, I think there's another thing. There's another element to it. So not only do we have to teach, but for the ones of us that have done well and had some successes, we have to show as well. We got what I mean by that. You can't just tell it, show it, tell it again, have them do it. Is to create that redundancy and be consistent. You can't just go teach it once a year and say I did my part.
Yeah,
you got to be consistent with it.
So here's where I would make Justin Exhibit A, in that he's able to speak at an early age about macro and microeconomics and how it affects the community at large and on a block by block basis. He got taught that at home.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's and one thing, Charles, you touched on that I wanted to, and I actually think this question right here might have to do with it, is public schools in Mississippi. So I went to high school in Seattle, which was a predominantly white area, and what I have realized is that I was more prepared for college than other folks that came from Mississippi. And when I look at the racial demographics, it was a predominantly white area where I went to high school, and what I was taught there versus what they were taught here. Down here, it seems that most people were taught to think on a much smaller level, as if their ceiling was shorter. Right? But in Seattle, the sky was the limit. It was expected that you were going to college, and it was almost like, if you're going to community college, you're looked down on. But if you come down here, just the fact that you made it to any university is a success. Wow, I can't believe you did that for someone of your color. You know what I'm saying? So being in an area where that's the expectation, if people put a ceiling on you, then you'll never be able to look past it. So, and I think it's no surprise, and I don't think it happened on accident that ceiling in a predominantly black area is much lower than it is in a predominantly white area. And that has to do with the public school system and what they're trying to teach, people that came from where I came from versus Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah, and I think so. Our hometown is a good example of this. While we know a lot of great teachers that were in the county school districts, we went to school in the city. We got a little bit different education than they did.
We did. And that's just facts. We had more resources. We had different types of experience.
Yeah, and then the imagination piece that Justin is speaking about, we were challenged to grow that imagination.
Yeah, no, like I was, my mom had always told me, shoot for the stars or shoot for the moon and you'll land among the stars.
That's right.
So no matter what I do in life, I always pick something that seems like an almost unattainable goal. When I was playing basketball at Jackson State, I was trying to go to the NBA. When I decided to go to law school, now I'm gonna become president, and I'm gonna go open my own law firm, or I'm gonna take this law firm even farther. When it's my time, or whatever the situation is, it allowed me to have that type of open thinking because I've seen it done before, and I've seen how far others have gotten. So I know it's possible. But if you live down here and you've only ever seen someone work a 9-to-5 job and paycheck to paycheck living, then you don't think that there's anything past, there's anything more than that for your life. And I saw a quote yesterday as I was scrolling on my timeline. They talked about, they said in America, you work 50 years to retire at 68. The life expectancy in America is 78. So you work 50 years to live for free, to live for 10.
Yeah.
And that's a harsh reality for so many people in the U.S. is that they busted behind for 50 years to live out those last 10 years. When you're the least immobile and have the least amount of energy, and I think that's just a problem and a terrible way to look at life. So it's something that we definitely need to change as a community.
I love it. You said it better myself.
I love it.
Family, any more questions or points to get them in? We're heading into the final 2 minutes before we wrap up. Charles, I will send it back to you and Justin while the family is kind of putting their questions in to take it from here.
Well, I'll just say, as a point of personal privilege, I could definitely see backing Senator Justin Jordan, soon President Justin Jordan. Let's give him a little time.
I appreciate it.
So I think this is the point where we get to brag on our interns because we got one at Syracuse right now. That's a rock star. We got Justin, who I hear from inside sources will be graduating very, very soon.
It's true.
We got Cameron, and we loaded down with talent, man.
We are indeed, and I think Justin can speak to that. One of the things we've always tried to do, and it's more coming. We try to give them. Well, we don't try. We give them things that are real, the same things we're doing. To give them that real experience. So it's not theory. I'm not going to send you over here to do something just for the sake of saying you was intern. No. What are you learning? What do you think about that? What are your thoughts? Because I got to tell you, it's always great to have a fresh perspective and a different viewpoint. It just helps you make the best decision possible. And if you guys have been around Charles and I long, we argue about everything. If I say the color is blue, he's gonna say it's not blue. So it's just what we do to get to the best solution. So Justin has come in and figured it out and jumped right in. And So Justin, I'll let you talk a little bit about your plans, but also what being here and what you've learned
Okay.
during your time.
Yes, so I because I wanted to say something about what Charles said. What at Urban Law, what you guys are doing, I can't quantify how important that is, not just for me, but for other people that look like me that didn't come from where I came from. I like to look at it, and this is what I was telling my folks back home. I was like, they're really, they're enacting white privilege on Black people. It's to be able to be an undergrad and to go sit in the office and talk to clients and write motions and learn how to do all that. Is something that Black people never ever get to see. I never get to go see another Black person and ask him, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? Okay, can I do this for you? Can I do that? Can you show me how to do this? So for me to be able to walk into a law office and just to be in that environment, just to see how it works, the business behind.
See, that's that old fancy technology. I told you about that old phone.
Yeah, man, it's can y'all see me?
Barely, it's real dark.
Oh, okay, hold on. I'm sorry. I'm getting phone call. I got a phone call at the same time. So let me turn my camera a little bit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there you go. That's beautiful.
Okay, yeah. So the white privilege that I get now, being in urban law and sitting with the mayors and other people with titles I never even heard of, and going out to lunches with them and just seeing what Black professionals really look like. So that's the most important thing I'll say I learned from being in urban law is how to move in the business world in being able to make mistakes. I said, like, in my first week, I didn't, it was the little things. I didn't understand how to treat the office assistants. I didn't do that the way I was supposed to. And that was a learning process for me, understanding the hierarchy in the office and understanding you gotta, when you're the new guy, you can't just come running in. You gotta, show a certain amount of respect to everybody in the office and in maneuvering in that type of environment. And then when I take that on, into my professional career, it's something that'll be invaluable because I've seen it and done it before. So, or if I'm filing trademarks with Leslie, when I applied to my next law firm, I say, well, not only do I want to be a defense attorney, but I've also been filing trademarks for 4 years now. So that's something that's invaluable. And so that's why I say when it's white privilege, I say that's what you guys are really blessing me with. And I hope you continue to bless other Jackson State students who show promising results.
Yeah, I got a new project I'm working on. So as soon as I nail it down and confirm it, I can't wait to tell you about it, Justin. Good stuff, though.
Yeah. Like I said, I appreciate y'all all the more for everything that you've done. So, to the audience at Urban Law, they not BSing you. This is real. They really are giving back to the community. So I will not to you. So that's all I can say about that.
Well, all right, Charles, take us out.
Well, it's a new year, new set of issues, new president next week. That's a lot of new. Yet there are still people struggling, and we all need to be mindful of that. Take a minute for yourselves and just breathe. I think I told you all way back before this pandemic got kicked off real good. If you don't come out of this pandemic with a new skill set, that's on you.
Yeah.
So I would remind you of that in January, since we as a people like to set our goals. You still got time. That's what the great Baxter White would say. You still got time. For your legal needs, Urban Law is open. Give us a call, 601-340-6800. Otherwise, as I told you, I'm becoming a pretty good prognosticator because I think Andre was like, why should we impeach him? You have to. He is now impeached. Only the first president in the history of the great nation to be impeached twice. Needless to say, Joe Biden is on the job already, and we wish him much success. Hopefully he will be like the Bulls during Jordan's heyday, and he'll get us out of some of this mess.
Yeah.
Because right now we could really use a flu game at the presidential level.
Yeah, definitely. If not 2 or 3.
Right. So with that, I would say enjoy your weekend. Continue to stay safe. One of the things that I am seeing, and we hadn't talked about it in a while, but one of the things that I'm seeing is numbers that are rising, new strains of COVID that are more potent, and slow rollout of the vaccine. And I know that's a topic for another day, but we need as many people as possible to consider getting vaccinated so that we can actually get back to some type of normalcy. And I'll stop right there because that's something for another day.
Well, there it is. So we'll see you same time next week. Be safe, wear your mask, check with your physicians if it's okay, get the vaccine if you can, and let's get ready to have a great 2021 and beyond.
One last thing before we go, Leslie, I forgot to say this.
Okay.
And I would feel bad if I didn't say it. Don't go to Washington.
Yeah.
Stay out of Washington right now. Teresa, we love you, but we'll eat Ben's Chili Bowl another time. The block is a little bit too hot right now in Washington with COVID and insurrection. So watch the inauguration safely from your home with your loved ones, and everybody be safe.
There you have it. See you next time.
Leslie and I have known each other since early childhood. We grew up on the same country road in Mississippi.
I think why we're good for the community of Mississippi is because we're a product of this community. We are just 2 country guys, and we were embedded with what I call the diamonds of good character.
Come, join the family, and help us build the community.